Hello, this is Ryan Kingsline. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to create a base mesh for sculpting inside of ZBrush. So we're going to do this inside of Maya, and we're going to work with just a simple cube to begin with. We're going to move that up, and using the grid, we're going to create an 8-head figure. So you can see right off the bat, I've moved it up one, and this is going to be our hip region right here. And then we're going to put some middle area for the chest or the stomach area. The rib cage is going to be right in here, and then we're going to move and position the head up here. The legs are going to come down, and the arms are going to go from there, with the wrists being right at this halfway point. So this line right here becomes our halfway point. So let's keep watching this. Notice how I'm moving the hip area in down here at the bottom. This is going to help me create really clean edge loops for each leg, so that when I get into the transpose tool, it'll be very easy for me to go forward with it from there. The hips are going to or arms are going to present a bit of an issue. But I have found that the best way is very similar to the hip area, which is that you kind of have to pull the top part of the shoulder out. This way the arms themselves are a distinct edge loop, a distinct shape, and it just really works best for working with topological symmetry. And transpose tool specifically. Here I'm just going in and adjusting the proportions. And I'm starting out a bit on the thick side. I'll go in and correct that a little bit later on. But you see I'm making him really almost 3 heads wide. Which could work for some characters. Now, I'm trying to keep all of these polygons pretty well distributed. And one thing that I noticed as I went in and I started sculpting this was that I really need to get in and create more edge loops in the arms. At the end of the day, there's really just not enough geometry in the arm area. So let's pause this and go back just a touch. And I want to take a look at the full figure and just dissect that for a second. So here we've got our full 8 heads. We've got 1 head up here. We've got 1.5 heads for the rib, 1 head for the hip. The great trochanter, the thigh bone, is going to come down here. The knee is going to sit right above this 2-head marker. And then the line of the tibia and our foot. Now, after our scapulas come out, we're going to have our humerus coming down. It's going to be right here. And then our wrist from there. So what you really need to notice, one thing, is that in between the head and the pit of the neck is about 1/2 to 1/3 of a head. And so that's just a good measure to kind of keep in mind. And then also, we'll fix this later on, but when we get into the shoulders, it's really 1 head here, 1 head here. So all of that ends up getting moved in. But beyond that, this looks pretty solid for us to kind of move forward with. So let's get ourselves back into the side view, which is where we're going to have to go in and start to analyze this thing, the gesture of this from the side. So really using this center line as our halfway point. So the knee is going to line up with the center line, and then the pit of the neck is going to line up with the center line. giving it some of that gesture for the humerus and the forearm. And then here I'm actually going to pull out an edge loop for the face itself. I find that's really the best way for me to get in and keep as much geometry in there as possible. I'm also going to add an edge loop in there. Right here I am moving these points to be essentially the iliac crest. So I'm moving them down slightly so that the hip can then come up from there. But these are going to then contain the bowl of the abdomen. Great trochanter comes out here. The rib cage is coming in at about this area. This is right here, sorry, is the second head, which is the line for the nipple. So I've moved those points down, but I am going to have to go in later on and insert another edge loop in there for to separate the rib from the hips. So here I'm trying to decide if I'm going to do that or not, and then I just decide the best thing is just to insert another edge loop. The cool thing about that is that it actually gives me a chance to put in this kind of ledge for the abdomen. So here the belly button is going to be at the 2 head mark, but after you reach the belly button you really get an up plane that's facing this direction, and then you get a down plane which is facing this direction. And then from there you have this flat spot. This is a classical torso perspective. So flat spot, then you have a down plane, an up plane, and then you've got rib cage from there. So it's a bit of an exaggerated sense for how you get a torso, but that will kind of work to show some of this off. So let's just kill that. And you can see I am actually working this these polygons. I am trying to get as much of a basic shape in as possible. I found over the years that I can do all of that inside of ZBrush, but if I start with a really nice clean base, it has a potential to make my life easier. So now I've gone in and I've pressed 3 on the keyboard so that I'm looking at a smoothed version of the model, which is going to allow me to start to create the and pull the vertices so that they basically divide correctly. Because when I go into ZBrush and I smooth it, it's instantly going to shrink the model in. So I want to have my base shape exaggerated out so that it'll smooth into the correct shape. So we're getting there. Legs are a little thin. So see, now I'm going to go in and just kind of pull them out. And I'm going to do that while I'm looking at this smoothed out version. So a little bit better. Working on the posture of the guy. One thing I like to do when it gets into this back area is I like to treat this area right here as though it's a cube. So the spine is going to come down through the center here into the lower back. We're going to get the sacrum right there, cervical, thoracic, the lumbar, and then from there the scapula is going to come out, and it's going to make this nice flat plane until it reaches the deltoid. So that's why I've moved this point down a bit right here, just to make sure that I keep a nice flat plane Moving the lower back up a bit, working the butt area. And now when I get into this whole area of the side view, keep in mind that my rib cage is going to be pointing up. So that's to my throat, and that's the basic shape that I'm going for the rib cage. And then the hips are coming back like this with the great trochanter. I should be throwing this down. Great trochanter coming in right there, moving back and back. But keep in mind that there is a very distinct gesture that that I am being very mindful of. Notice that the pelvic area is tilting forward and it is pointing in this direction, whereas the rib cage points back in this direction. Also notice that the thigh comes in, makes a nice curve like this, whereas the lower leg is making a curve back like that. And so this is extending this nice, beautiful, graceful curve that is part of the human body. You need to keep those things in your model at all times. Working the face a little bit here. Trying to get just a nice overall shape to it. Going to speed this up a little bit. And then let's slow this area back down. I want to be very mindful of what I'm doing right there in the chest area and the shoulder. Notice how those vertices are intersecting, but when it's divided, it smooths out correctly. Now, before we get into this arm area, or the hand area, I'm going to actually divide this model in half, and I did that by inserting an edge loop around the middle area and then deleting the other side. So I just want to isolate this one side so that I'm not worrying about creating edge loops in both areas. We're just going to mirror this over after the fact. And so the hand is something that has the potential to add a lot of problems to your life because we have to add geometry here, but that geometry then has to terminate somewhere. It needs to flow into the rest of the model. So the first way I do this is by just inserting enough edge loops into the hand to kind of cover all of the fingers and the thumb. But you'll see right away that that is going to end up causing me a couple of serious problems. So here we're going to go insert edge loop, and then there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 fingers, but then notice how all of that geometry is then flowing into the back area. So coming in, going here, and then is doing the same thing on the other side and flowing into the chest area. And so these polygons are going to be a much different size than, say, the polygons up here. And that's not going to really work. So we need to find another solution for that. And this is part of our job as digital sculptors, is we have to deal with this polygon economy and manage the flow. So here I am, just thinking this all the way through, trying to understand, and then voila, I hit upon the answer. And so what I've done is now I'm going to create an edge loop that's going to flow around this side, and then they'll create another edge loop which is going to flow around this side, and then all I've got to do is divide this once, bring all of that geometry up, and I'll terminate that somewhere. In this case, I'm going to redirect it actually into the head because I always need more geometry in the head. And we're going to have space for 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers. then we're going to just pull the thumb out of this area. So I'm using the split polygon tool to do that, and then the insert edge loop tool here. Insert edge loop didn't really work on the other side. I didn't really learn why, but I just went in, inserted the edge loop in both places, and then used split polygon tool to connect them. Okay, but again, up there in the head area, that's going to be where I have the most problems. So as soon as I get done with this thumb, I'm going to move over there. So thinking about what I'm going to do. And see, now I'm selecting these vertices, I'm going to delete them, and what that's going to do is allow the polygons to, instead of flowing this direction, it's going to now flow up into the head, and then this one is going to flow into the chest. So instead of having two, I'll just have one. The other one's going to flow upwards. So that's about as good as I can hope for topology. The only thing is as I mentioned earlier, I really needed to add more geometry in that arm. So I would add another edge loop, or even two edge loops, one for the bicep, one for the forearm. Here I am just playing around trying to see which way I really want to go. And ultimately, this was the easiest way. My hand is definitely not the right shape, but we'll get there. Shape and size. And so one thing that I did here that is very important to kind of keep in mind is that I made sure I always work with keep faces together on. You can see it right up here in the top of the edit mesh menu. But when I extruded out the fingers, in the channel box area over here, I then went in to the keep faces together option. It's on. All I do is go in there and type in a 0, and we're good to go. So now let's continue with this. And I experiment with the fingers a couple times. I put knuckles in there, but at the end of the day, that's just really adding too much geometry in the hands, because already the hands are containing a lot more geometry than any other part of the body, and that's just because I have to extrude out 4 digits, and 4 digits out of the top, and then I have to extrude out 1 digit out of the side. So that really just puts a lot of geometry in there, and that's going to mean that the hand may contain almost as much as many polygons as, say, either the body or the face, and that's not a workable solution. That's just wasteful polygon management. I like to keep the base mesh with some sense of gesture, and I almost always work with my model palms forward. And the primary reason why is because it makes sculpting the anatomy of the forearm very simple. And since most of my job is education, it really makes life simple for explaining it. Now, in the arm area, I've got a few kind of issues in terms of the polygons, topology, and the flow. And so I want you to pay attention to this area right here and how we kind of fix that. So right in here, you get a bit of a sense of how things are going to go a bit astray. That doesn't look good. You can see this one triangle right here really reaching pretty far up. So I'm going to realize that here in just a little bit and go in and try to fix it. So what do I do at this point? How do I make sure that the polygons are going to flow, in a way that's very conducive for sculpting? Because right now that's not going to be that conducive for sculpting. So just a few touch-ups, working all the way around the model. So I'll get back to that hand here in a second. All right, now there I'm thinking, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, well, where can I redirect these polygons? So having the polygons flow kind of up this way and then around that way is causing me some issues. Essentially what I need to do is I need to find out where I'm going to terminate this triangle. So this is the triangle that I need to be worrying about. And ultimately the solution is that this triangle needs to move over here. And then the polygons can flow here and around. And that's going to give me a little bit more control. Very simple fix. You can see I try another approach, but it doesn't work. And then ultimately, I decide to just reposition the triangle. Delete that edge, and there we go. All right, at this point I'm really I'm noodling this base mesh. Because a lot of this I can get in the actual sculpt inside of ZBrush. But I want to see how far I can get this base mesh working for me. Also, one of the things that I'm really a fan of with this base mesh is that it's very blocky. So it has a lot of structure already built into it. You can see that in the back area here and in the front area here, things are very much structured. So it's very much of a flat plane that comes here, 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 and here. And all of that is pretty much straight. And that's what I really want, because that's going to help me as I get in and I start to sculpt the model. What I'll end up doing is just carving the biceps in, rounding the trunk, but I'll have the overall structure, which is that it is this cube. Our shoulder girdle is really this cube that sits on an oval. I'll have that largely established for me. Okay, here I'm working on the shoulder girdle. Even more, getting this nice roundness for the trapezius and the scapula and all of that just kind of flowing over the surface. And again, I can't stress this enough. When I've gone in and sculpted this mesh, I really want you to be mindful that I would delete this right there. Or divide this, add an insert edge loop right in those areas, because there really was not enough polygons for the hands. Or the arms, I'm sorry. So just checking it out, playing with the fingers, the hands, getting those roughly in position, while it's still just simple box modeling. Pull the heel out a bit, and we are almost done. So that is our very simple base mesh, and we'll take that into ZBrush and start to sculpt it.